Hello everyone. So I made a dialogue system, and in this video I want to show both the gameplay side of it and also the editor side. So I had this little outline over here, and I will start with showing some gameplay examples from the dialogue system, and then we will go into the editor and look at how that looks. And then I'll show a bit about how the dialogue editor is implemented, and then I'll show a bit about how the gameplay code for the dialogues is implemented. And finally I'll round off with showing some new immediate mode graphical user interface features that I did to make this dialogue editor. So let's start with the gameplay example. So here I have my game, and I can walk up to this squirrel and talk to it. And already here we see something I didn't have before. I have choices in my dialogue. So I can say nice weather, and then the squirrel responds something. 24 degrees Celsius, a light of draft from the west, a perfect day for, and then the cat says pancakes. And then they go on and say some more stuff. Something about getting eggs, and essentially get a quest. Then you can talk to the squirrel again, and now you have different dialogue because it has set some state variable that you've already talked to this squirrel. You can ask what did I need to do again, and then you can ask him about something stupid like what's the difference between a squirrel and a square, and then he will respond irl. I think that's the difference in the words, and the cat says correct, and so forth. So the big thing I didn't have before is the choices that I can do in there. And so that was what I wanted to add, and then lots of other things happen on the way. So let's go into the dialogue editor and see how that looks. So I jump into my editor mode here, go to dialogue, and this is the sort of dialogue graph I have for the squirrel. You can see down here that there's a couple of different ones here. The current one is the squirrel. So the dialogue graph starts with start node, and immediately on the start node you see there's a progress check, and this checks like one of my I have a bunch of different progress variables that it can check. So if you never have talked to the squirrel before, you haven't done any progress in the game, then this got egg, never mind the names here of the progress variables, might be false. So then it goes down here, and then it checks have you talked to the squirrel before, which is the one we hadn't talked to him before at all. So it triggered this one. And then you see this nice weather here, which I chose. And then it jumped. And yeah, so this is like choices. So here you say, do I want the player to say this or the other entity you're talking to? So this one has player, and then it's important whenever the player says something, it has cat ears. That's cute, but it also helps me a lot to differentiate the nodes, to quickly see, instead of having to look at this picker here, I can see on how the node looks who it is who's saying it. So here you can choose between these two, and you can add more choices and stuff. And each choice has like an out connector where you, oh, there's a bug there. Ah, bugs. There's a little glitch. And these out, so with this out connector, you choose like what will happen next when you choose this choice. And then you go down here and you have like the squirrel say these things about the temperature, and then it goes back to the cat saying stuff, and at the end it sets a progress variable that is talk to squirrel. And then next time you talk to the squirrel, it will probably end up here, and then it will say these other things again, where it can be like, what did I need to do now again, blah blah blah, and this stupid joke here about the difference between the squirrel and the square and stuff. There are some nice things that I've done. Like I said, there was the cat ears to differentiate them. I also did this thing where you can, if you take a node and you try to pull it around, then it will try to snake the connection around in a nice way. And this is just so that you easily can see. It's very obvious here why you need it, because this one, you choose this choice and then it goes to this node, and then after this one it's supposed to go back, so you can choose another one. So that makes it a lot easier. Otherwise this line would go straight behind this one and over here, and it will almost be impossible to see what it is. So I did all that as well. And yeah, so let's look a bit at how the dialogue editor is actually implemented. So we can go to the editor, edit mode, dialogue. So you have this code. So this is all implemented in immediate mode GUI. And essentially I have two types of structs here. I have the dialogue nodes, and then I have the dialogue connections. And dialog nodes look like this. It has a position, and never mind this one. And then it has a variant. And the variant is like, is it the normal node, the start node, the progress check node, the set progress node? There's a couple of different nodes, not that many. But a normal node is the normal node that says stuff. And what it essentially does is down here it goes, this is where it renders all the nodes. It goes through all the nodes in the graph I'm currently editing, and then it just draws some backgrounds, and it checks, oh, is the mouse rect inside the node? Then it says the mouse is over this node, and it saves away the node index of it. And then it will switch on the variant of it, so that for the normal node it will render all the sort of what you saw. You saw the normal nodes have this actor choice and the text and stuff here. So this is the text. It renders a string field, and then there's an enum selector for the player or entity. And here this draws the cat ears, very important code. And then we have down here, it renders the choices. So you have these multiple choices, and it has the little minus button here that removes a choice and stuff. And then again, it has a text field for the choice itself. And then there's an extra row for the add choice button here. So it can have that one, and this is the button here. And then we come to the thing that you have all the slots. So there's an incoming slot and 2 outgoing slots on this one. And so the in slot, it fetches with this function like, okay, where should the rectangle be for the in slot? And this just calculates based on the node position and stuff where this thing should be. And then it says, it checks, are you inside the Shrek? Then in that case it says, okay, the mouse is over the in connector of the node you're currently looking at. So you see you have this different state here. And then there's 2 things that can happen. Either the node has no choices, and then the connector ends up at the bottom, so we can stack them like this. Or if it has multiple choices, then it draws nodes on the side. This is the bug I'm talking about. You see how it on this node it lights up as well. Yeah, I made something silly. And so if I don't have any choices, then it just makes an outrect, which is this one, and then it says like, okay, are we inside this rect? And then it draws it and stuff. And then it does something similar for the all the other nodes. It has like different. Let's see, do we have other nodes here? Yeah, set progress node. This one draws. Where is the set progress node? I scrolled past it, didn't I? Here it is. It has a label at the top that says set progress, and then it has a drop down for which progress to set, and then it also has the connectors in and out. Now, this is just the visual stuff, and this thing here where it sort of saves the hover state over which thing you're hovering, the node or the connectors and stuff. It needs to do something also. So there's some interaction code further down. And down here we have like, so if you're over a node and press the left mouse button and control is held, then it adds that one to the selection. So you can do this. By the way, I also have box selection, so I can do like this and move these around. And if control is not held, and then it tries to do like a drag selection, so it does all this stuff. And what this essentially does is that I have these states that's called the dialog editor interaction state, and there's currently 4 of them. So there's none, drag selection, connecting, and select. Where drag selection is when you're dragging something around, connecting is when you're making new connections with nodes. You can do like this stuff. And so in this one, when it's in no state at all, it can go into, for example, the drag selection state, which will drag around the node, and this is down here. And in this one, we essentially update the position of the node, and when we release the mouse button again, it records undo and jumps back to the other state. And then there's other things like, oh, if I am hovering one of the out nodes and then go somewhere, then it will add a connection like this. And that's this code here. So we're still in the none state. We are hovering an out node, and if you press the left mouse button, then it goes into the connecting state, and the connecting state has like from which node, from which choice. So choice is if you're doing one of these guys, and then to which one are we connecting. And so in the case of hovering an out node, then it will set the from one and the from choice, but it can't set to yet because that one is not known, because that's what we're doing, right? We're trying to connect this one somewhere from this one to some other place. So then it will be in that, then it will be in this state, and this state is like, okay, from -1 or not, which means which direction are we connecting? Because we can connect backwards as well. We can do like that or like that. So either from is not -1 or to is not -1. So it does all that, and then and this is just for drawing the line between them. But then if you actually release the left mouse button like this, if you actually release it, and for example, in my case, I'm in this one because from is not, I'm in this one, from is not -1. Then it checks, okay, am I hovering an out connector of, wait, from is -1. No, okay, yeah, I'm in this one because from is not -1 over here. So am I hovering an in connector on another node, which means is this one more than 0? Then it will do this, and then it will add a connection when the connection has like a from choice and to a node. And that's sort of all there is to a dialog connection. It's just 3 indices, which node, from which choice in a node, and to which node do we go. And if I'm not hovering anything, then it will make a new node, and it by default makes one of these standard nodes. Yeah, and then we have some other funny states, like, so that's now we know how I add connections and stuff. There's also, if I have selection and press delete, it removes the node and stuff. And then I have my selection. So if the left mouse button is held, if you press that one down, you're in the none state, then it will try to do the box selection state. And that's down here. And this one is essentially, it has a mouse reference of where we started, and then it takes the current mouse position and stuff, and then it draws a rectangle which is slightly green and transparent there, and then each frame it goes through all the nodes and checks, does this rectangle collide with the world position of the nodes? And in that case it kind of lights up them like this, and then at the end when we release the left mouse button, it will modify the selection to the whatever is in the intersection of these two of the nodes and this selection thingy. So that makes it so you can do this. And yeah, and then like I said, you can make new trees with this button, though that just, so there's a few different, you can show the data structures here. The dialog tree is the top level thing, which is currently the one for the squirrel. It has a name and a UID for identifying it. And then it has a list of nodes and list of connections. And the connections are drawn before the nodes, so they end up behind the nodes, and they are drawn up here somewhere. Quite a bit of code in this thingy. Here it draws the connections. So and I think the interesting thing here is, how do I do this sort of snaking connection? With snaking, I mean this sort of snapping around and trying to not go behind, like in this case, because the naive thing would be to go directly from here to here, but it will be hard to see where it actually went, and it's also less chaotic when you have bunched up stuff like this. Um, so it draws the connections by looping over all the connections and checking, okay, where do I start, where do I go? And then it uh, will just check that both the from and to actually are nodes that exist. They're not out of bounds in the indices are not out of bounds. And then this is essentially the code that does the sort of interesting little snaking around. And it's not that complicated. I would just say you just need to know what you're trying to do and do one case at a time. So I started with like, okay, I want it to go from here to here and then to this upper corner of this node and then to so essentially 4 points. It's 1 point here, 1 point here, 1 point here, 1 point there. And if my node is straight below, then I want it to go straight so it doesn't do this when it doesn't need to. And then it also needs to check if it's on the other side. And you do these cases one by one, and when you do it like that, it becomes less complicated, because when you just look at it like this, like, oh, that does a lot of funny things. But it essentially the first and fourth node are always the middle of these plops. And then it says, okay, the second position will be the sort of this position plus the half the node width. And then it checks which side is the fourth connection on, and then it reverses the vector from here to the other side, depending on which side this one is on. So either it goes here or it goes there. And then there's some special if statements here for special funny cases. So if the difference between the fourth one, which this one, and this one is less than the node width plus a random plus 10, then it and also the fourth one's y position is below. So if we're up here, then it snakes around like that. But if down here, then it goes straight. In that case, P2 and P3 is the same as P1 and P4. So it actually draws a line here that immediately ends, and one here, and then it just goes between. So in this case, we have P1, P2 here, and P3 and P4 here. And the other case is if P4's y is, if it's actually above P1, then we do this case, and this is the sort of funny snake around case like this. So I think that's a very fun feature. You see, it takes some explaining to do, but it's quite simple. The individual pieces are quite simple. Another thing I do is I set the color randomly of these connections, so I can identify them. The way I do that is I set the random seed using the index of the connection, and then I get a random value so that it becomes stable. Otherwise, it would flicker if you do like random all the time, because the seed resets where it starts from. So then I get all these just random colors. It's no control over this. It's just it randomizes the RGB between 100 and 255 on each channel, but it's good enough. Okay, so that's a bit about how the dialog editor is implemented, and so the dialog tree, like I said, it is a dialog node and a connection, and these will be serialized out to disk as a dialog file. I have my dialogs.json, and these are essentially all the dialogues in the game go in here, and it just saves out a list of the dialog trees with the name, the ID, and the nodes and the connections. By the way, I have a Discord server now, where you can both talk about the game and also about tools development and stuff. So there's a link in the description with an invite to that place. So let's go back to the gameplay code and look a bit at how that is done. I can reset the game here. So we have this stuff. We can look at interaction. What is it called? Active interaction. Somewhere here. Here it is. So this stuff is a bit. This is when it's inside an interaction, it will run this code. And here it will be like, okay, I'm fetched the dialog tree I'm currently in. And then I have this interaction state has a current node index, which is just which node are we currently displaying stuff from. So it knows, okay, we're on this node. Never mind this function for now. And then it does a couple of different things depending on if we're trying to do choices or if we're trying to just draw standard lines and stuff. So if it's just like in this case where you just say nice weather, actually if it's like this one, this is just a standard node, then it will go into this one. On the current node, we'll look at the variant, and then it will be like, okay, we actually have some text on this line, and then it will draw that line with the text. It's just the text that we had in the editor that we put in there, and then which actor it is as well as stuff. And then it checks if you press Control, then it will do two things. Either it will try to go to the next node, but if this node has choices on it, then it will go into sort of choices mode. So then we'll stay on the same node, but start to process the nodes, because you can have a node that says something and then has choices underneath. But in this case, it's just drawing the line, which is this function here. So this one takes this text, which is a text from that we wrote in the editor, and the actor, which is the player or the entity, and then it's the entity handle of the thing you're currently talking with, which in this case will be the squirrel, and the player we know from a global variable which one it is. So here we do lots of interesting little shenanigans. We check if who is talking, and is the one talking on the right or the left side, and this sort of directs which direction this little arrow here on the bubble should go. So if we run to the other side and talk to this guy, oh, I'm behind a tree, that's not supposed to happen, then the wait, what was that? I got pushed in. So I have this thing where I can unlock the camera. You see it will push the dialog window around like that. Anyways, but so it tries to figure out which side is the different people involved in this dialogue on, and then it will draw this arrow on the left or the right side and try to not like have it just above the person saying stuff. So that's that. It's just for checking who's on the left. There's also an anchor point, which is where the arrow should appear. And then we do the thing where we need to, in this case, it splits it into lines, which is quite a funny problem. So we have a function called getGUILines, and this one will, not going to go into details, but it will essentially measure each letter and build up words. And if a word ends up, if it tries to write a line and one word is outside the maximum allowed width, then it will say, okay, draw this whole line, but then save this word for the next line and continue drawing there. So this one just this function makes a list of lines. So I get this list of lines, and these are the lines that I will write out here. And from the list of lines, I can be like, okay, the max line width, this is the longer line, so it knows that, and then it knows how large should this box be, and then we have the height of the bubble here is this stuff, because it says, okay, what's the font, the height of the font times how many lines will there be and stuff. And then it does, like I said, if I unlock the camera, I can push the boxes around like this. And that's this stuff. So it checks what's the left and right edge in world coordinates of the camera, and then it checks, okay, are you outside in any direction of the camera right now? In that case, you will get pushed a bit. So I mean, you can create, you fly away, you can be like, ah, but you know, in normal gameplay circumstances, it won't do that. And then it draws the background rect, which is just it draws just using a color. First it draws the it draws in the outlines, that's this stuff, and then it draws the actual rectangle, and this is just written in code using the position where this position here and the calculated widths and heights. And then it goes through all the lines and renders the text inside them. And then for each line it jumps down this much dialog font height, which is just a variable I've set. Reset again. It gets slightly more complicated when you have the choice stuff like this. So that's a separate little piece of code. It's this one. So if you are rendering a normal node and you press left control, which is currently my use key, and there are choices, then it will say current node, do choices, true. And then you come up here and it goes like, okay, let's do the choice mode, which is draw like this. So this code looks a bit similar. It is in some sense copy pasted from the other one, but it's different enough that I can't use the same code. So it will do the same thing where it tries to check who is on the left and not. But then it does like key up and down to like, okay, which is the currently selected choice. So you can do this. And then it has to go through all the choices and fetch all the GUI lines and calculate how many lines, because I don't know if I have a good example. Wait, I'm gonna see. Yeah, in this one you see you have a choice that is split into multiple lines. So then I need to both go through all choices and calculate how big is this thing, but I also need to split it into lines and then draw those lines separately and stuff. So it's like double trouble thingy problem. So in this case I get all the lines and I calculate how wide should this whole thing be based on the widest dialog option. Now there is a max width as well. It's just that I don't want dead space coming after. So there is a maximum width, but if no line is at the maximum width, then the dialog box will be slightly narrower. So and then it's all the same, draw area height, but these are calculated a bit differently because the number of lines is the total number of lines in all the choices plus some spacing in between the choices, which I think is here, the dialog choice margin times the number of choices minus 1, and that will make add this amount of space so it all lines up nicely. And then it pushes it around like before with this code here, and it draws the big background rectangle, and then it has to do the stuff with the choices where it goes over each choice, and then it renders the little icon on which we are on. Currently it's like a little scary looking cat face. I'm not sure what to put there really. And then we have it goes through all the lines and renders the text, and it essentially just renders each line and then increments the Y position with each, and after each choice, so after this one, it renders this line, and then it adds this extra space, which is this stuff, and then it goes to this one, renders this line, renders this line, renders this line. And then you press left control and it will say that you have chosen something, and then it will, next frame, it will come into this one where it will temporarily draw that choice as, because if you say this, then it will draw this as you said it. So it will do this, and then it will wait for you to press left control again, and then it will manually move forward to the next node in the dialog tree. Yeah, so that's a bit about how the dialog stuff is implemented. And I guess I should show go to next node. So this one is called a bit everywhere. So go to next node is just, it takes from it takes the current interaction state. So with this one it knows which is the current node. So it checks, it goes over all the connections and it looks for a connection that comes from the current node. And if the choice, so if I'm doing a choice and not just progressing the dialog where there are no choices, then it will also, in case there is a choice, it will also match up the choice index. And if you find a connection that comes from a node and from the correct choice index, then you know that wherever that one goes is the node you need to go to. So then it says the current node is the one we found here, and that's it. That's how it goes to the next node. Now I've worked on dialogue. I worked on node graphs before for more general things like shader graphs and stuff and gameplay programming. But when you do something very domain specific like dialogue, then you can make much simpler sort of interpreters for your node, for like the graph interpretation. Because when I worked on like gameplay graph nodes, then you almost needed like a little interpreter that was much smarter. But in this case, I have like 5 different nodes, and it's the problem domain is just a lot simpler, so you don't have to have as complicated code for your interpretation of the graph. Okay, let's go on. We have talked about now how the gameplay dialog code is implemented, and now I just want to show some new immediate mode GUI features that I did for the dialog editor. So the most important new feature I made is these multi-line text fields. So you see here that and this uses the same GUI line stuff that I use in the gameplay, just as a different font to calculate the size using, and then it has a different width of the field. But then it can sort of split a string into multiple lines. So I made a new sort of GUI control that does that. So it split it into multiple lines, but then I also need to be able to edit these. So I need to add this little cursor or caret that you can move around, so you can go into the middle of words and change it and stuff. And you can hold control to jump whole words and press home and end. I currently don't have, so I can use the mouse to select words. I'm more of a keyboard person because of my programmer background, so I tend to just control arrow key around. So if I was working with a bigger team, then I would add all those things. But since it's just me, it just takes more time than it's worth for me, because the mouse selection stuff with like being able to select stuff can become quite a lot. So use the GUI lines, and then it has the movable cursor and caret, and the way it does this movable thing is it just stores an index of at which character are we currently, and then when it splits into lines, it just makes sure to check, like uses knowledge of which line am I currently rendering, so that it can place it at the correct spot. And then when I actually press a button, it will yeah, there's a few bugs, like sometimes goes like this, but it's not critical for when it's just me using it, but it's very useful like it is right now. And the code for this is, I don't know if I should show that because it can get a bit confusing maybe, but I essentially have in my UI, I have a caret that I can move around. I can press home, then it goes to 0. I can press end, then it goes to the length of the string. This is my multi-line string field. And then if you press the left mouse button, then it goes one chart to the left, or if you hold control, then it uses a for loop to kind of count how long until the next space bar, or until we get to the beginning of the string or something. And if you do the same thing with the right mouse button, then it will loop forward and find the next sort of space. And that's how it moves that one around. And then it uses the same get GUI lines to fetch the lines, split the string into lines so that it can draw them separately. And then it draws the caret position. It just needs to make sure that because the caret position doesn't know anything about line break, so it needs to know, okay, how long is each line, and then sort of adjust for that so it can put it at the correct place on the line where it's supposed to be. But the UI caret is just an integer that says at which position are we currently in the whole string. Yeah, so I think that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.